Hi, my name is Ejal and welcome to our Google session. Been looking forward to doing this presentation even before a year ago. This is going to be one of those sessions that you're going to remember, even though you don't work with this technology. It's quite a unique case which affects all of us. Today, I have one of my customers, Ulrich Christensen, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about yourself, Ulrich.
Yes, hi, my name is Ulrich Christensen. I'm the principal infrastructure engineer at Oncology Venture, and I'm going to tell you some about the stuff that we have at Oncology Venture in terms of the things that we're running in Google Cloud and using the Citrix products.
And my name is Ejal Brakke. I'm a system engineer with Citrix in the Nordics, mainly in Denmark. And I've been working on this case for almost a year now. And I've been really looking forward to telling you a little bit about what we do at Citrix together with Google Cloud. So a little bit about the agenda today. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit why Google Cloud, why Citrix, and why this collaboration is working so well together. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of Citrix, which is our digital workspace. And then we're going to hear a little bit about how Oncology Venture, our customer, uses this workspace in actually creating their solutions and supporting their team all around the world. And then we're going to hear a little bit about this very, very unique case about how you can actually scan for cancer in Google Cloud using Citrix technology. And at the end of the session, we have a little bit about where Oncology Venture is moving from here into the future together with Google Cloud and Citrix systems. And then we have some links to some of the technology that we're starting at, which if you want to try out some of the technology by yourself. So a little bit about Citrix and Google Cloud. Why are we collaborating with Google Cloud? Well, first of all, we both have the same identifiable core features about reliable and trusted around security. So Citrix has been for many years one of the trusted company when it comes to building a secure digital perimeter about your application deliveries, especially within virtualization. We've been one of the few pioneers within virtualization, app deliveries in a secure manager on many different types of OS. So it's been a really incredible journey for Citrix for over 25 years now. And then as we move into the future together with Google, we are looking into analytics and data insights. So we've always been an expert at looking into the application usage within our users, using our technology on a Citrix platform from endpoint back to the server farm. And then we're looking at about how can we, together with Google Cloud, transform how we collaborate in teams. And nothing has been more testing for all of us during this coronavirus in working from our house and still maintaining high productivity and doing a lot of collaborations in a digital world. So it's a natural fit between Google Cloud and Citrix because at the core, we share the same goals and the same values. So this is a partnership, perfect fit. And it's been ongoing for many years. We started out a long time ago, and we have, for the last 5 years, introduced a lot of technologies in Google Cloud. Yes, we are working together with all other cloud providers, but we have a very, very rich feature set with Google Cloud. And there's very, very little that we don't introduce into our portfolio that is built for running in Google Cloud. And I can just, one of the main named brands that Citrix has for many years is the NetScaler. Now it's called an ADC. It's a front-end load balancing, and it's at the core of most of what we do. And if you look at the top 500 companies around the world, a lot of them use the ADC features for load balancing, secure gateway, and many, many other things. So we have really invested into this partnership. And as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of technologies where we adapt, where Google is going and adapt it into our Google technology, into our Citrix technology. And one of the things that we've built is also this SD-WAN, which creates a security connection between your future in the cloud and down to your on-premise environment. We're also known for our single sign-on feature set, especially around ADC. And I know Oncology Venture is looking into using this. So we have really been a single sign-on company for many years, and we continue to build that as Google introduced their IDP solutions more and more into enterprise business. Another thing that we are known for is utilizing high graphic loads. So, for example, the signers who needs a lot of GPUs to do rendering in high-end graphics. Most of the time when you're working in a simple framework structure, you don't really need this heavy GPU loads, and it's increasingly expensive, especially around medical research, where they are using this GPU to for example, look at high-resolution X-rays or biological scans. So these the definition on some of these scans are very, very high. And one of the things that we are using within Google Public Cloud is the NVIDIA GPU acceleration, where we can actually take a machine and share it amongst many users. So sort of like you can book a schedule, a time where you need this enormous solution to do all your rendering. And thereby you can save a lot of money as a company. So very, very large investments that we're doing together with Google moving forward. So there's no doubt about it. This is at the core of what Citrix do, this partnership with Google. When we look into the future, we've always been known to have very good app deliberation. We have been very, very good at presenting content to remote users around the world. And remote, when you're looking at where everybody right now is working, we're working remotely. We're doing this session remotely. So it's at the core of what Citrix does. But one of the things we've always been known for is also supporting a lot of devices. So in the old days, when you needed to run an enterprise solution and you had some of the users using MacBooks or Chromebooks, you would need Citrix to virtualize this enterprise app to push it to any device anywhere. So one of the things that we've been doing for many, many years is multiple device support. And just to give you a glimpse into that, Raspberry Pi is becoming a mature enterprise product, and we are actually supporting with our Workspace client to Raspberry Pi, which in some scenarios, and you might laugh about it, but I went to the hospital the other day, and in the heart cardio ward, they actually had a small Raspberry Pi for a monitor just showing the remote EKG of the patients walking around the ward. And that was being presented on a Raspberry Pi hooked up to a monitor. So it's really becoming any device, anywhere, and any application available. And as we look at application, we're moving more and more into SaaS application, not necessarily having virtual applications. We're also looking at how we can do all the things that we're known for, security, analytics, and single sign-on with local apps, which are pushed out alongside perhaps virtualized app or even SaaS apps. And around that, we have built this secure digital perimeter based on these 25 years within the enterprise space, where we supported a lot of the largest companies around the world. In my own country, I can't go to any hospital in Denmark without coming into a doctor who knows about Citrix and knows when I tell him I work for Citrix, he knows exactly what it is, because it's the first thing he sees when he logs into a computer. So that trust is really something that we take at heart. And when you hear about Ulrich's story within healthcare, why he chose Google Cloud, there's a very interesting perspective about the two technologies being HIPAA compliant. But I'll leave that for Ulrich. So what we're doing with the digital workspace is enhance the experience and productivity. So that means that we are constantly monitoring the change in location the user has, so we can do something about the performance and maintain a high performance from the users having to do his job. We're also looking at the way that we collaborate. So a lot of users today have too many apps, and when they need to make a decision, they need to log into different application, and then they open their mail and then write a response to that. So that world we're trying to compress into what we call micro apps or microservices, and being able to take a lot of content switching between applications into this micro apps world. And that is something that we've taken the lead on and actually designing these. And we have full interaction with other vendors out there, including Google. So when you're looking at using enterprise application running in Google Cloud, we're able to take that data and say, okay, 80% of the time you just need this information and that information, collaborate together, and then have this approve or disapprove or deny transfer of funds or so on. So simple actions is something that we don't want to do within our workspace. So how does it look, what we're actually delivering with Google Platform? So you can divide Citrix into two worlds. One is the control plane, and one is the workhorse behind the curtain, so to speak, our VDAs. Our VDAs are the ones who are actually doing the heavy lifting and doing the presentation. The control plane is just doing the introduction of the users and what rights the user have and all the single sign-on. But then the workload service and all that, I will show a little bit more about how that's running and works in Google Cloud. We have Citrix Access Control. So, for example, if you're in one location, you can save things locally on your device. But when you're outside on another location or outside your zone, for example, if you're in Europe and you work out of the US, when you're in Europe, you're not allowed to save on your local device. So the whole access control thing we have actually integrated into G Suite, which is a very, where you just take the security part of G Suite and lift it to another level using access control. And this is what a lot of our customers, they really appreciate about Citrix, that they can say, well, you have one user scenario when you're working inside the company and you have access to these shares. And then you have another scenario when you're working on a different location or even borrowing somebody's device to do work. And of course, we support the story with our Citrix Workspace app for all of the Google devices that you can think of. So even down to Chrome-based devices, Android devices, and so on. We integrate our enterprise device management into the Citrix G Suite solution. So the Citrix resource location on Google Cloud, I won't go so much, I will rather have Ulrik talk a little bit, but what it actually does is that you take the users are creating a session which hits the workspace and the gateway services. The control plane simply says, well, you have the right to this, and then it introduces you into the workload service via these cloud connectors. Now, the cloud connectors are crucial technology when talking about a hybrid solution where you both coexist on-premise and you work in the cloud. So that's where the cloud connectors come in. And it actually defines which applications should be presented to you, which file shares, which cloud-based file shares you should have available. And it presents the best VDA for that desktop that you're actually running. But I'll let Ulrik cover it a little bit more. Now, this solution from Oncology Venture, I actually talked to Ulrik over a year ago, and I was so fascinated by the solution because it can actually change people's lives. We've all had people who are affected by cancer, and what he told me sounded like science fiction, but I believe we've pulled it down to earth, Ulrik. So maybe you can tell a little bit about Oncology Venture and the solutions that you've built.
Yes, thank you very much for that. So let me start by introducing the company Oncology Venture. So Oncology Venture is a medtech company based in Copenhagen with employees in the US, all the way up and down the East Coast of the US. We have developed a platform that can predict the best treatment for cancer patients. So our platform is called DRP and is based on the full transcriptome of the messenger RNA or the messenger RNA. That combined with tumor data from other patients, we have created an algorithm that can predict the treatment that will benefit the patient the most. So our employees work on many different devices, anything from Windows machines to Mac. and also on mobile devices. So we spent a great deal on support before we introduced Citrix to our employees. They're also working in different time zones, so the support could be quite difficult. So we decided to offer this standard solution, the standard desktop with all the right tools and all the right applications that they needed. So it was easy for them to get things done. By making this centralized solution, we also managed to secure our files. Y'all just mentioned that with the digital secure parameter, because no files left our own data center or the Google Cloud data center. So that made this solution very secure. And we also heard about before, we had some key challenges, if you can say that. So we experienced some poor performance with some other vendors, cloud vendors, and we actually started to look into this on-premise solution, but we ruled that out quite fast because the initial cost to build our own data center with all that, what that took with cooling and all that, that was just way too expensive. So we started to look into another solution, and we ended up with Google Cloud and Citrix because they gave us the features and the performance that we needed. We also had limited scalability before we introduced this Citrix and Google Cloud to Oncology Venture because we didn't have anywhere to build it actually. We also had many different cloud solutions. We had file solutions, and they were kind of scattered all over the place. So we didn't have any standard or any structure in it. So, and with this kind of data that we handle, we have very strict security requirements. So we needed to step up our A game to meet those requirements. So with Citrix and Google Cloud, we immediately saw that we could get those features and that performance that we needed. So we were also able to implement all the security things that we also needed. And with the partnership between Citrix and Google, we were able to scale this solution on Google Cloud. So I want to talk a little bit about the Workspace app. Y'all mentioned that just earlier. So we rolled out Citrix Workspace app to make it easier for our employees to get access to their data. So we have people sitting around the world working on our solutions. And also we have people traveling. So we wanted to give them the best and most easy access to all of our applications and all to our files. Also, another thing was that when we had new hires, they were productive from day one. All they needed was the Workspace app, and they just logged in and they had all their apps and all their files right there, right in front of them. So that was a lot easier for us. So if you look at the solution as a whole, y'all mentioned this also. So all of the users are sitting on their own device, and all they have is the Workspace app. Now they connect from the Workspace app through the gateway, which is in Citrix Cloud. From the Citrix Cloud, the gateway connects to the the Citrix Cloud connectors, and the Citrix Cloud connectors communicates with all the things that you have in your backend. That could be your Active Directory and all your server VDAs. So all the workloads where your applications are and all your files are. So with this solution, we were able to give people secure access and also be able to scale up the environment as needed. Because sometimes we had people coming in, consultants working on different projects, and we could easily spin up some extra workloads in Google Cloud with a machine creation service that was introduced by Citrix about 6 months ago, if I remember correctly. And we could get access to these external consultants right away from day one. So why did we choose the workspace? Well, for us, the most important thing was it gave us easy onboarding. So it was very easy for us to onboard new hires. And also when things changed, if we got a new application, it was easy for us to push that out to our employees around the world. It was also easy for us to get external consultants access to our own system. Another thing was that we got a lot less support from our employees, and we had everything in one place. So all our applications and files could get, people could get access to those files and applications from one place. At the same time, it kept all of our data safe. So with Citrix, we can provide a much better service to our users and to our partners, which I think is a key element if you want to stand out as a professional company. So why Citrix in Google Cloud? So we started out to look at an on-prem solution, and because of the cost, we just didn't go with that. So we had to buy in a lot of stuff to get that rolling. So we looked at different public clouds, and we ended up with Google Cloud as the best fit for us. The reason were that Google Cloud was very simple to get started with, and for us, it had the best performance. One other thing was also the Citrix Google partnership. And Citrix was really helpful. They were very serious about the partnership with Google as well. So as I mentioned before, Citrix released machine creation service, which made it a lot faster for us to manage and update our image and being able to push out new applications to our employees. One other thing that the partnership came up with was something called autoscale. So with autoscale, we only spin up the resources that we need in Google Cloud. So when we don't have any need for any resources, autoscale is going to turn off the machines that we're not using. So I tried it out for about a month, and in course of that time, I believe we saved about 40% on our cost on resources in Google Cloud. So if you're thinking about moving to a public cloud, it's a very good feature to have because it's going to save you a lot of money.
So Ulrich, so for example, a lot of people who go to public clouds, they're afraid of the cloud economics because once you spin up a machine, the economics, it's just the meter is just ticking. So yes. Autoscale helped you control you could sleep better at night knowing that if nobody was using the system, the workload service would be shut down, and machine creation service gave you the agility. Is that right?
That is correct. So since we have users in different time zones, we almost always had users on the system, but sometimes we had more than other times, and the autoscale feature scaled up the number of workloads that we had for the users. So as soon as the number of users, when they locked off the system, autoscale automatically scaled down the number of workloads. So it simply just removed the workloads, which means that you don't have to pay for those resources anymore. So that saved us quite a lot of money actually. So,
and with machine creation service, I remember you told me that it actually retains the metadata of the VMs that you have in Google Cloud. So when it needs to spin up, you know that it's the same type of VMs that actually get spun up, which is really cool.
Yes, not only that, it keeps the metadata. So it also firewall rules, exactly. So when you spin up, like let's say if you spin up like 4 new workloads, those workloads will get the same meta data pushed on to those VMs, which means that you don't have to go in afterwards and and do all the firewall rules for those 4 VMs, because the system already knows that. So it runs pretty much by its own. So you don't have to go in and do anything. It can actually pretty much do all of it by itself. So that's actually one of the very unique features about running this system in Google Cloud. So, good question.
So tell me about the cancer scanning, the really exciting thing that you're doing in Google Cloud.
So as I mentioned before, we also run our DRP platform in Google Cloud. So, well, we used to run the DRP platform, which is our Drug Response Predictor. And we were able to run, I would say, about 8 to 12 samples at the same time. And we knew that we wanted to scale it up and be able to run more at the same time. So we decided to look into, could we run these samples in a containerized environment? Because if we could do that, it would be a lot easier to scale it up and down. So actually we had a project with about 1,500 samples, and it took us about 2.5 to 3 weeks to run those samples. And I believe that in the new on Google Cloud, if we run them there, we can do it in probably 2 or 3 hours, I guess. So going from 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks to 2 or 3 hours for the same amount of work. So that's a big deal. So we actually went ahead and built this solution on Google Cloud, and Citrix has been a big part of that as well, to secure this application. As I mentioned before, this kind of data, we need to lock that in. We have to make it safe. So Citrix has a big part of it, has a big part in it. So we introduced Citrix ADC to the solution. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Before you do that, so a hospital gets a cancer sample from a patient. They submit it into the cancer scanner, and the cancer scanner opens a container for that one sample. It has a scanning mechanism of what kind of drugs has the best opportunity to cure this kind of cancer. And then a report comes out the other end saying, dear doctor, I would recommend this treatment, or this treatment has this kind of probability of success.
Yes.
And this has the least success criteria. So it's both best success and least success is the report that comes out at the other end.
You can say that. So what we do is once we get the end result, we put in a sample into the, first it has to go through our own wet lab, and then we once that is done, we can put it into the system that we have, our DRP system. And the end result from the DRP system is a report saying that which drug will benefit the patient the most. That's what we get. And
super. And, and before you can do very, very few, and now we just scale it up in the cloud.
We can scale this up. We can now run hundreds, maybe thousands of samples at the same time. So yeah, it's quite big a deal. So
and the part of the Google Cloud that you have loaded your solution into is HIPAA approved. Is that correct?
Yes. That is correct.
So that's huge. That just based on that, you can go through all the FDA stuff and say, well, we're running it in a HIPAA-approved location.
Yeah, the FDA, we're talking to those guys right now. So
okay, say no more. So tell me a little about, because another HIPAA-approved product is the Citrix ADC, and that's
yes.
one of the reasons you chose it.
The ADC, the reason why we looked at the ADC is, one of the things is that we need to make sure that the application itself is safe, it's secure, and the data that is being put in there is safe. Okay, so, and also we need to have some kind of user control. So we use the ADC to ask different IDPs. It can be from a company, it can be from Google, it can be from, you can even use Facebook if you want to, but just, so we can control, which users have access to this. So if we have someone that comes up to us and say, we would really like to, try your DRP system, we can integrate with whatever user IDP that they're actually using. So yeah, that's some of the reasons why we chose the Citrix ADC. Another one is that Citrix has introduced something called the Citrix Ingress Controller. Now, each we have a number of what is called pods on Kubernetes running our web application. So we have the CPX, Citrix ADC CPX, load balancing the different pods on Kubernetes. And then we have a VPX, a Citrix ADC VPX, that are load balancing the different CPXs. And what happens is that if, let's say, we run up 4 or 5 pods, the Citrix Ingress Controller automatically puts the configuration from the second tier to the first tier ADC. So if you have something that breaks and the cluster needs to spin up a new pod, that change will automatically be configured to the ADC. So that gives a great way to deliver a very reliable service. Yeah.
So basically, you can it can handle whether you spin up 20 containers or 50 containers or 2,000 containers. It will still manage each container as a separate environment, and it will make sure that your medical data is protected within that container.
Yes.
Super.
So what's next for Oncology Venture? So what we're looking into now is actually giving pharmaceutical companies access to this technology, so they can test their drugs and see if that works on their patients, and also giving easy access to hospitals and doctors as well. So that's the next step for Oncology Venture. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jarl for a short session recap.
So for those of you who feel brave enough, based on the testimony from Ulrich today about his solution, we have some links for you to take a look at, especially around the ADC and the ingress mode to control multiple containerized solutions, and then take a peek at the machine creation services, which allows you to rapidly deploy a lot of servers within Google Cloud. So I urge you to take a look at these links, and our auto-scale technology could really save you money when using Google Cloud, which is the best way to adopt cloud technology within your organization. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Ulrich and I. Our emails are in the link, and thank you for joining us today at this special session.